In part 3, we began discussing a remote viewing experiment conducted by Ed Dames. The experiment yielded a series of predictions, ending with a devastating series of solar flares known as the killshot. Many believe the first 3 predictions have already come to pass, and considering as how they ended up perfectly describing 3 fairly recent historical events, they're certainly difficult to simply explain away by means of any otherwise rational explanation. A link to that video can be found in the description as well as the end screen to this video, but as a quick recap, the 3 predictions previously discussed were as follows. The largest solar flare to date, which happened November 4th, 2003. The mutation and spread of a killer wheat rust originating in Africa, which accurately described the threat posed by UG-99 back in 2007. A massive earthquake in Japan, and the breaking of a nuclear reactor, which ended up being an accurate description of the Fukushima nuclear disaster of 2011. So here in part 4, we'll be taking a look at the predictions that have not come to pass. The first of the unfulfilled predictions is one that seemed pretty unlikely back when it was first described. Simply put, North Korea would launch a nuclear attack against South Korea. When this was first announced on Coast to Coast AM, North Korea had no nuclear capabilities, and as such, the prediction was met by many with a certain degree of scorn and skepticism. Now, unless you've been in a coma or living under a rock for the last 20 years, then you're well aware of the fact that this has been an ever-growing, increasingly plausible concern in more recent times. It's an indisputable fact that an increasingly sophisticated nuclear program now exists in North Korea, one that is sufficiently capable of suiting the whims of a seemingly mentally unstable dictator.
The timing of this is extremely interesting because, well, I started working on this video and then today I hear on the news something that pretty strongly ties in with one of the predictions that will be discussed in, not this video, but my next video, which will be this topic. The prediction is that North Korea will bomb South Korea. And if you've been following the news, you might have heard something about the fact that Crazy Kim has just launched some sort of new some sort of new missile that they're saying is potentially far more explosive than any other missile North Korea has ever test launched. So yeah, that I found out about that after I already started working on this video. So the timing is interesting.
Now, North Korea is threatening further weapons tests after firing 2 unidentified projectiles. It is the 4th such test in 2 weeks. The tests are in retaliation for the combined US-South Korea annual military exercises, which are currently underway. South Korea's military puts the site of the latest launch as South Hwanghae province, so the projectiles had to fly across the peninsula before landing in the East Sea, also known as the Sea of Japan. The increasing tensions on the peninsula threaten to derail negotiations between Pyongyang and Washington. Our correspondent Laura Bicker has been explaining more.
Well, Pyongyang appears to be piling on the pressure. It has launched 2 missiles from its west coast, flew right over the peninsula and landed in the Sea of Japan, also known as the East Sea here in South Korea. These missiles, certainly Pyongyang must have some confidence in them if they are prepared to fire them over their own peninsula. It comes at the same time as the North Korean Foreign Ministry released a statement saying that they believe that the joint US-South Korean military exercises, which started yesterday, were a violation of the agreements that Kim Jong-un had reached with both Washington and Seoul. This is a stern warning. Pyongyang appears to want to put pressure on Seoul and Washington to do a deal. Meanwhile, Donald Trump continues to say he's in no rush. He continues to say these short-range missile tests are not in violation of the promise between him and Kim Jong-un. But the question for the United States and for people here in Seoul is how long does North Korea continue this sort of pressure? And will Kim Jong-un be prepared to step up these missile tests? In fact, fire intercontinental ballistic missiles, longer range missiles, conduct nuclear tests to try to get the attention of the United States.
The final event prior to the kill shot shares an interesting commonality with the previous prediction in that there was a time when both seemed highly unlikely to occur for various reasons. Dames makes a point to mention that this final prediction could easily be interpreted in a manner that may be potentially inaccurate. The prediction was not necessarily that a US space shuttle would be grounded by a meteor shower, but rather something that looks like a space shuttle would be brought down by what appears to be a meteor shower. This distinction is important because it is precisely why it was once assumed to be a completely bogus, technically impossible prediction.
All right. Do we listen to Major Ed Dames? Now, he predicted a series of events coming up before the kill shot. But the event leading up to the kill shot didn't happen because in 2011, they retired the space shuttle due to the Columbia disaster. So that throws all of his theory out the window because the space shuttle is retired. He's seen in the future, he's seen the space shuttle return after being hit from a debris field. It cannot happen because they retired the space shuttle in 2011. So that blows his theory out of the water.
While it's true that NASA's shuttle program was officially retired on August 31st, 2011, its design was the inspiration behind several craft that have no affiliation to NASA and are still being used to this very day.
The session sketches generated had resulted in the assumption that the craft being forced down was a U.S. space shuttle, since it was unique to the world at the time of the prediction.
Our sketches and drawings looked like the current, very similar to the current U.S. space shuttle vehicles. There are some variations among viewers too, but we know that the Air Force has another program. That particular vehicle also looks like the U.S. space shuttle, the manned space shuttles.
Today, the recent U.S. space shuttle design is being emulated by many different space agencies around the globe, both government-oriented and private. No longer is the design unique to the U.S. space program, but the precursor itself remains the same. When a shuttle-like craft is forced down from orbit, the kill shot will begin.
He goes on to describe an eerie sight on the ground which seems to be connected to whatever celestial event was behind the shuttle-like vehicle's forced re-entry. What he and his associates viewed was a vast battlefield in which the fighting amongst opposing forces abruptly yielded to a strange moment of peace. Every soldier on the battlefield was standing in silence and gazing upward at something. Dames doesn't elaborate any further on exactly what they were looking at, other than to say that whatever it was had to be of a profound and sobering nature. Something of greater significance than the war they were fighting would compel all sides to leave in peace and every man to return home. This particular prediction does not seem to be a precursor to the kill shot. Though it's a bit unclear, it seems to be more of an indication that the kill shot has begun. But if the peculiar battlefield scene marks the beginning of the kill shot, then perhaps the event in question was some kind of massive solar event. Flares are sometimes accompanied by a much more powerful event known as a coronal mass ejection, or CME. As the kill shot refers to a series of flares, maybe what they were seeing was a massive and much more powerful CME hurling toward Earth. The energy from a flare takes a little over 8 minutes to reach Earth. The far more powerful blast of energy delivered by a CME takes a bit longer. As many variables affect the amount of time it takes for a CME to reach Earth, accurately predicting one's arrival can be a bit tricky, while it has been known to be as little as 17 hours. The usual range is more often somewhere between 3 to 4 days. CMEs can cause radiation poisoning in many life forms, including us. astronauts have a higher risk of exposure to lethal amounts of radiation while in space. Historically, the atmosphere and magnetosphere have been sufficient to protect the rest of us below.
This killshot sequence will cripple communications worldwide. It will take out satellite communications in a very short order. Power grids, we're all aware of what it will do to power grids and what it has done in the past in certain instances. Go back and check it out. Power grids will go down. There's many people over many months of time and throughout the world will have no power. There are cities without power and communication. You can figure out for yourself what that will mean too. Not only will you not be able to pump gas, not only will you not be able to pump water, not only will there not be food on the shelves because there will be no gas in the trucks to take the food to the cities, but I could go on and on. You can figure the rest out for yourself. That's why this concept of sanctuary, knowing where to go with your last tank of gas, is so important.
This concept of sanctuaries is in many regards quite similar to the bioregions as described by Schwartz. Granted, they each have slightly different implications, but they both seem to be referring to self-sustainable areas in which people have come together.
There are some tangential effects that we're picking up also as remote viewers and have picked up over the years. Apparently, the center of the Earth, the core of the Earth, is changing rapidly as an effect of what is happening on the sun. If that's the case, then we're probably looking at, as an adjunct to effect to the killshot sequence, we're probably looking at massive volcanism and earthquakes as well. And I think it's very important to point out, and very important indeed, because of the adiabatic heating of the atmosphere, we're going to have very high winds in many parts of the Earth. The sky, the sun, the light will be obscured.
Now, I find this particular prediction to be quite interesting because it shows up in both Christian and Islamic eschatological prophecies.
The 44th chapter of the Quran speaks of the entire world being engulfed by smoke, leading to a period of darkness lasting 40 days. This could be the result of a volcanic eruption, although the Quran does not specifically mention this to be the cause. However, it does mention the occurrence of massive earthquakes during this period of darkness. Revelation 6:12 speaks of a massive earthquake, the sun being blacked out, and the moon turning to blood red. We know that having a high concentration of smoke in the atmosphere could very well lead to such a change in appearance as the description given to both the sun and the moon. Again, a volcano is not specifically mentioned here, but this would be a scientifically plausible scenario if a supervolcano were to erupt. There are also numerous similar elements described by the Sermon of the Seven Suns in Buddhism, as well as in the Hindu epic Kali Yuga.
It would be very difficult to grow crops on the surface because of both winds and lighting conditions.
This is consistent with the countless prophecies of many religions speaking of a worldwide famine. Winds and lightning conditions have also been specifically tied to some of these.
I also want to point out that there's going to be most probably unprecedented geophysical events when this killshot sequence starts. The Earth can only take so much of protons hitting its magnetosphere, and on top of that, you're going to have X-rays that will be at Earth in 10 minutes, right? Now, we don't know how powerful those X-rays will be, but we do know that those protons will be extremely powerful, that mass from the sun. So we're looking at anywhere from 24 to 48 hours, perhaps, sometimes longer, depending on the velocity of the flare itself, before that actually impinges upon Earth's atmosphere and begins to heat it up. When the heating occurs, after that's done, that's when the power grids begin to go down. That's the X-rays themselves. will take out satellites if they're powerful X-ray flares.
Now I know this video is getting a little lengthy, so bear with me for just a bit longer. I would have probably left the map of the safe zones for another video, but since I received a request to cover it in this video, I shall oblige. The link to a high-resolution copy of this image can be found in the description, but if that ever goes away for whatever reason, you can always grab a screenshot of it from this video.
Just because we have not seen sanctuaries out of the thousands of individual sanctuary remote viewing sessions and projects that work, just because we've not seen sanctuaries in some of the places I will outline, does not mean there are none there. I'm just saying a pattern has emerged that says the following. South America, we found no sanctuaries in South America or Latin America. We have found, additionally, very few sanctuaries in the entire southern hemisphere, including Australia and New Zealand, with some exceptions in Australia and 1 or 2 exceptions in New Zealand. Almost all of the sanctuary locations are in the northern hemisphere. For Europe, a number of sanctuaries for Europe, but almost without exception, they are all in generally northern Europe, but not too far north. So we're looking at certain places in Austria, Poland, all the way through Russia. But it's important to know that all of these sanctuary locations, almost without exceptions, are small locales that are distant, fairly distant from population centers or separated geographically by mountain ranges or bodies of water from large population density centers. Here are the very, very essential things that you're going to need to try to sit this out. Fresh water is critical. You must have fresh water because it will be in short supply almost worldwide, not all over the world, but in many places, very short supply. Obviously, food. You're going to have food. Everybody now feels that something's coming down. Economically and globally, it has nothing to do with the kill shot. That's just economics alone. Food supplies is already short, and food is expensive and going to be more expensive. But it will be absent. There will be no access to food once the kill shot sequence starts. You need to have shelter, as you know, and you're going to need to protect yourself. You can't do this alone. People need people. You'll have to band together as communities, hopefully, and for self-protection and to help each other through this. Identify your own sanctuary location. Identify it. Recon it and become familiar with the area. Take some time off from work, go and familiarize yourself with this place, this small town or village or wherever it is, and know how far it is to drive, or if you have to get on a plane, how long it will take to get there, etc. I said, because when the sequence starts and there's no commo, and there's no electricity, no power, and there's no water, etc., then your friends and your family will believe you. But if you do not have your affairs in order and have not identified this safe zone by then, you're still screwed. So do it quietly, do it alone, let them continue. There's no need to continue the discussion. Just tell them it's a hobby. Identify this place to go to. That way, when they're scared to death, you can say, honey, let's go. Take the kids and let's go. Call your brother or sister later, when we get there, and if you can call at all, or tell them where we are going so they can come too. There's an additional point that I really need to make. I really need to make this because there's so much confusion in the public eye about remote viewing and remote viewing predictions compared with the end of the world type of prognostications that we see all over the place. We're not saying, as professional remote viewers, that the kill shot sequence is the end of the world. We're saying it's the end of life on Earth as we know it, probably, but it's not the end of the world. There's still going to be humans alive on this planet that are going to have to rebuild after the sun goes back to normal, which it will.
Well, I got around to addressing just about everything that I wanted to address. The only thing that I did not get to is the question that I posed at the end of part 3. There are quite a few reasons why we should give that question serious consideration. including a few very interesting thoughts posted in the comment section of part 3 that had never even crossed my mind. I will be getting to that at some point because, well, it's important. Now to address the results from the poll at the very end of part 3. It was an extremely close race between tall whites and our alien demons. It was so close, in fact, that I was a bit concerned at one point that there might be a tie. But the winner by a whopping 1 vote was our aliens demons. Now I know some of you expressed a bit of concern about this series. Once I explain what inspired me to devote an entire series to that one question, as well as laying out exactly what my intentions are, I think that at least some of those concerns will be alleviated. So while this is an extremely controversial topic, it will be fair, it will be objective, and it will raise unique and unexpected points to consider. But instead of attempting to answer that question, it will attempt to challenge the notion that there is a clear, simple answer. Part 1 of this series will be my next major topic, but it might not be my next video. I've been wanting to return to my roots by reincorporating much shorter videos into the mix, as they will allow me to upload on a more regular basis. Anyway, I hope everyone enjoyed this video, and I hope everyone is doing well. We'll see you next time. Hey everyone, Drew here from Mad Cat Mysteries, and I hope you enjoyed the video you just watched. If you did, you can click on the subscribe button below. I'd appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.